Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community School Board of Trustees. We begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we do our roll call of members, just like a lot of you, we were shocked and saddened to learn of the death of our colleague this weekend. Jordan and I were elected together. We both ran for the first time in 2010, so we started serving in 2011. He was certainly a proud graduate of this district. He lived in his grandparents' house, I guess, right there by Southside High School, and was a proud graduate of Southside High School. Graduated in 1984. His sons went to Southside, and he was also really committed to improving the neighborhood right there around his house. He told me once that he started a community garden for all of the people that lived in that area. So if they wanted to garden and raise, vegetables and things, they could. I thought that was pretty neat. He was certainly an advocate for public education and all of our students, just as he was for his own sons. And on the behalf of the board, our condolences go out to his wife, Nicole, and his sons, Julie and Sebastian. And on the behalf of the board, we are just, really saddened to lose him, and to, it's truly a loss for the community also.
Yes.
So, board roll call. Steve, I know you stopped by Jordan's house before the meeting, and thank you for doing that. That's got to be tough. I can't imagine how, devastated they are. Glenna?
Good evening. Unfortunate circumstances, but Jordan really had a heart for the city, had a heart for the schools here, and was really a valuable member of this board, and we're going to miss him tremendously. And I'm here for the 2nd District.
I like Jordan. I will miss him very much.
Maria Norman, member at large, and I'd just like to say that in the short time that I got to work with Jordan, I saw him as a very straight shooter, I guess I would say. Mm-hmm. He always had thoughtful things to say and insightful things to say, and we thought very differently about things, and so he definitely taught me a different perspective to view things in. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family.
Ann Duff, member at large. Obviously, I sit next to Jordan, so that was really the first person I got to know on the board, and we chatted frequently before meetings. And I've just been thinking about his family a lot because we graduated around the same time, we're the same age. Our kids are the same age, so I've just, been thinking about him all day and his family, and I hope they get through this, and I know we will, but it'll just take time.
I think I found my composure here. Steve Carano from the 5th District. I stopped by this morning at the house and the Lebemoff household and expressed my condolences. Nicole gave her a big hug. I think it was the first time I'd been in the house for a number of years. And the last time, I believe, was when we were building Southside High School, when we were going through the renovation, rather. And I was called over by Jordan's father, Ivan, because if any of you knew anything about Ivan, was that he had immense pride in his neighborhood. On Saturdays, he would usually hire a couple of guys from the rescue mission, and they would be cleaning the sidewalk and the streets. He had a deep love for greenery, and I was asked to come over with an architect from Schenkel Schultz because Ivan was concerned about the types of evergreen, the shrubs that we were going to have on the property, and he wanted to make sure that we had chosen the right shrubs to provide some shadow between the football field and his house. So the architect came with a big wad of blueprints, and we laid them out on the kitchen table, and architect pointed out to the types of greenery that we were going to plant, and Ivan said, okay, I'm good with the deal. He was a strong advocate for the renovation project. There was some concern about the cost and what we were going to do. How dare we spend all that money in an inner city high school? But Ivan said, I'm behind it, and in his footsteps, Jordan followed, and like his father, was a strong advocate for not only Southside, but for Fort Wayne Community Schools.
Thanks, Steve. And I'm Julie Hollingsworth, elected from the 1st District, and my far left is Janet Doherty, the clerk of the board. Good evening. And our superintendent, Dr. Wendy Robinson.
Do you mind if I say something?
Yes, absolutely. That was good.
I began teaching at Ward, and I call it my Angela Davis phase because I had an afro that I had to turn sideways
Pictures.
to get out of the door. And one of the first families that I ran into, because they were so involved at Ward School, were the Lebamoffs. And at the time, the father was the mayor. But the mom was even more forceful than the father and had very, very, very strong opinions. So I have had the pleasure of having one or the other. I always got them confused, of the Lebamoff brothers in my classroom. I did not have Jordan. And they say that in sad times you have to try to remember things that made you smile. It was always amazing for me to watch the Lebamoff family, because even as little kids, they always tried to walk like the dad. And so they were way back, 1973, very involved. And at that time, Steve, you'll remember, they were beginning the conversations about closing Ward. So I got schooled quite a bit by the mayor and his wife about how you get people involved and what you don't do. But it was evident that was a family that was committed. And I personally had the opportunity of watching that commitment as we unsuccessfully saved Ward, tried to save Ward. But it's just always a happy memory to remember. They were a very strong family unit. And what they did together. So same for me, condolences, but just happy memories of what a strong family unit they were.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So we have no awards and recognition, so that brings us right to our consent agenda, and that includes minutes from our last meeting on February 24th, vouchers for the period ending March 9th, payroll for the period ending February 14th, and the personnel report. And members, of course, have seen all of these prior to the meeting. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move approval.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ann. So all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we don't have any old business. That brings us to new business, and the first is the first semester. Oh, Dr. Robinson, I forgot to ask you, was there anything on the personnel report you wanted to highlight?
Mary Lowry's back again.
I saw that.
We had a principal who had a baby, and so who do we call? Mary Lowry.
I think she was my
Who do you
principal
call?
at Irwin.
I worked with her at Elmhurst.
Oh, everybody has.
I know. I know.
But she's
Wow.
back.
She's back. So it's recommended that the board accept the extracurricular account reports for the first semester of the 1920 school year. Indiana code requires an accurate account of all money received and expended by extracurricular accounts. A report of the sources of all receipts, the purposes for which the money was expended, and the balance on hand is required to be filed with the school board of trustees. All extracurricular semester reports were audited by the business office. The general ledger summary report of each school's account is provided. All extracurricular records are maintained for 10 years and are available for inspection. So our Chief Financial Officer, Kathy Friend, is available to answer any questions. Here's the massive document that everybody read through. Do you have a motion and a second?
Move for approval.
Second.
Thanks, Glenna. Thanks, Tom. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we have 2020 electrical projects. It's recommended that the board approve the following construction contract for electrical projects at various sites. There's a base bid of $761,800. There are some alternates at North and South Transportation, Fairfield Elementary for new ceilings and lights, Shambaugh Elementary for technology infrastructure, which brings the contract to a grand total of $954,800. The project includes miscellaneous electrical work at several buildings. The project was designed by Primary Engineering. This recommendation is within the program budget as identified in the capital projects plan and is funded from a combination of the operations fund and the 2019 general obligation bond. Project specifications require the work to be completed by July 30th, 2020. Darren Hess might be here to answer any questions. There you are. And we have, as you can see, two bidders with LA Electric being the lowest. So do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ann. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we have the Northwest Evaluation Association Assessments, or NEAA, or NWEA, as it is better known. It's recommended that the board approve the purchase of Northwest Evaluation Association's map and skill assessments beginning in the school year 1920, totaling $235,986. These map and skills assessments is an adaptive system similar to iLearn and is aligned to the Indiana academic standards. Phase 1 begins this school year with Fort Wayne Community School purchasing licenses for reading, language arts in grades K through 12, with grades 11 and 12 optional, and mathematics grades K through 10. A district assessment audit will be conducted by representatives from NWEA, and professional learning will be collaboratively planned and implemented by NWEA representatives. Cost for phase 1 is $235,986 and will be paid for from the 1920 formative assessment grant awarded by the Indiana Department of Education. So this supports Fort Wayne Community School District Goal 1, achieve and maintain academic excellence. Questions will be addressed by Tracy Reed, Chief Academic Officer. So do we have a motion and a second?
Move for approval.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Ann. Questions? So my main question, Tracy, is I am concerned about adding more testing. So I hope that we are replacing something and not just adding additional tests.
Yes.
So currently, we administer DIBELS 3 times a year, and we also administer IO interim assessments 3 times a year. So currently, we are planning to discontinue DIBELS, and as a result, it will give us data similarly aligned to DIBELS data. It will also serve the role of our dyslexia screener for our students in K2, K3. So we'll take care of that, and we're in discussion regarding the interim assessment, the IO assessment.
What's IO stand for?
I don't remember. But it's an item bank that we purchased, and so.
Jennifer's right there.
Yeah, and so, I'm sorry. So it was an item bank that we purchased, and so when we develop our curriculum, the teachers who develop the curriculum also write assessments that are aligned to the curriculum.
Can you
So-
answer what IO is? Because teachers talk about it a lot. Okay,
It doesn't stand for anything.
all right.
And so we do this IO testing, and I assume it's a formative test to gauge students' progress. We do that in what grades and how many times?
We do it grades 3 through 12.
12?
I think it's 12. Is it 12? Yeah. It's aligned to the curriculum, so it reflects the standards that we've taught for that particular period of time.
Well, I noticed that this, for reading and language arts, the grades 11 and 12 are optional, and there is no 11 or 12 for mathematics. So my vote would be to not do the testing in 11, 12, and give those kids a break finally.
Yeah. So what we discussed internally is using that for students who may not have passed our I-Step 10 assessment, who are still trying to pass that if that's
Or
needed.
whatever test we end up
Yes.
having for them.
I think one of the things we need to remember, NWEA's been on the table forever, and we resisted going to anything else because we had so much. Now we can't rely on anything from the state. And since we've done the curriculum rewrite, which is aligned to the state standards, teachers need something that they could use to help them with instruction, and we need to stop doing things. Now, like that dyslexia screener, the state decided we have to do it. So what we're trying to do is to find one company who can help us meet the stuff the state's making us do, give teachers something that they're familiar with, but the other part that's really strong is the information for parents, because you don't get anything that parents can understand from the state. So if you look at phase 2, it's also, we're going to continue trying to see what we take off. And I think that the part that worries me about high school is we already have 4 different ways that they get to graduate.
Yeah.
By the time they get done, who knows? So we're a little cautious to jump out to do something because you don't know what they're going to do. And so the biggest thing with this NWEA is that we can't rely on the state accountability. And we have to stop adding things that
Yes.
aren't aligned to our curriculum that won't help teachers with instruction. So phase 2 is constantly involving teachers to say, what else do we need to take off the plate? But they've been pretty adamant about the ones that aren't very helpful for them. And IO, when Tracy was talking about the item bank, the item bank makes sense to them, not necessarily the testing. So that's why we're doing this in phases, because once you roll it out, you got to have teachers talk about what makes sense and what doesn't. But actually, people, we're still going to have iLearn in the spring. And until the state gets their act together, how are teachers supposed to explain to parents where kids are? We don't have anything reliable right now. So no, we're not all jumping up and down, yay, another test. But at least you have to give the teachers something they can actually use. The biggest part is parents can also get information, which we don't have now.
So is this when a student takes one of the 3 formative NWEA assessments, do parents get that data too?
Yes, there are reports. There's a lot of reports that come with the assessment. And so part of the conversation is working with teachers and principals to be able to share the reports with parents that are appropriate, and also use the data to inform their instruction in the classroom.
Will this be given 3 times a year as well?
Yes.
What's an adaptive system? How is it different from, formative testing or whatever?
So an adaptive test is responsive to students' responses. So if a student gets questions incorrect, it'll lower the level of difficulty for the questions. So if a student, say for example, is a high ability student, a really smart student in, say, math or language arts, it'll get progressively more challenging. So it'll give you an indicator on what level the student is at. So a teacher could then adapt or modify instruction based on what the student, how the student performs on the assessment.
And then how low is that, will that range go? I mean, if you have a high ability student and that student is able to give answers and it gets increasingly challenging, does it also do the opposite? So it gets increasingly easier if you keep
Yes.
missing it? And then how low will that go? I mean, and what's the purpose of that? Is that just to find out where they're at?
So what happens is that based on the student's response and from the reports that come from how the student does, it identifies students' potential gaps in knowledge and skills. And so teachers can go in and provide that differentiated scaffolded instruction to support students' mastery at on a specific skill or standard.
And then how does that affect grading? So if I take the same test as Tom and he's real bright, and he gets an increasingly difficult test, and then I struggle, what kind of grading scale do you use then for that test? Or is it just an individual, this is your score and there's no comparison within the class?
The assessment is not used to grade students.
Okay. It's just a tool then for the
Yes.
teacher to know how to help that student learn.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not used for grading. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So how many phases are there?
The next phase is the professional learning. We'll start in the summer for teachers, and then they'll come out. Well, we haven't negotiated that as of yet, but the goal is for them to support teachers with professional learning, principals with professional learning, and even district level people to help us support buildings with the use of the data that we receive.
So NWEA has been around for a long time. I mean, I've heard a lot of comments from teachers about it, and in fact, I don't think I've heard anything bad about it. So I'm just curious, why now?
It's a good question. I think professionally, I think we're at a point with our curriculum development that we're ready for something. We knew we needed something. It was, when did we get a firm footing as it relates to our curriculum? And now that we've established where we are with our curriculum, we're making modifications. We have a process that I'll talk about in a little bit. I think right now is a good time. And we need something to be able to inform what's happening in the classroom. And so this is the appropriate time for it.
Okay.
I think the other answer is we had too many things on the table. And until, as Tracy said, we developed the curriculum, you didn't begin to see gaps in what we were doing. The biggest issue is we kept waiting for the state to fill the gaps. So you didn't want to add on something else, but now we've given that up. And I think the other part is NWEA has also been more flexible to adjust to what we need. Because we, as a large urban district, don't necessarily need what other districts, they're not going to change their program for us. But I think they are more willing now than they were before. But you asked the number of phases. Just about everything we do is in 1 or 2 or 3 phases. Because even once you buy it, you've got to let the teachers kick the tires, like we did with curriculum.
Right.
Then you go back and figure out. So we try not to commit long-term until people have used this enough to tell us, this is no better than what we have, or this was very helpful if you give me more. So as we've looked at it, there's at least 3, but one of the phases is 2, which is the whole professional development, how do you use it? And then obviously the next phase is getting more people involved in it. So we'll keep you informed of those steps, because we're going to have to talk about the curriculum writing. We'll also give you feedback from teachers, because you said it's been around a long time, and teachers have really wanted it. We just had too many things on our plate, entirely
Makes
too
sense.
many. And we're trying to take some off and put the ones on that are going to help parents and students know where the kids are learning.
Had you heard at all that the Department of Education may not accept the NWEA for school improvement plans?
No, I have not heard that.
Okay, because I heard.
Everything's up in the air because, you know, we're not going to have an elected superintendent
Yeah.
of public instruction next year, Glenna.
Right.
All coming from the governor.
No, this is the federal government. That's why it's a little further removed from our, I mean, so anyhow, you might.
I don't
at
think
least-
that, I think this is more an internal use.
It's internal.
not
I
any-
hear that.
right,
I just
right.
am wondering if
Right.
they are aware of that, because we do have to produce school improvement plans, and
Right.
the state has to submit theirs. And so it's
Smart.
hard to, there's these overlapping jurisdictions,
Right.
so it's a little hard to know. I just wondered if you were aware of that at all.
These are on the state-approved list.
Yeah, they are.
The
Good.
state and the federal government some days don't talk to each other.
Right, they're
we
on
figure
different
out
pages. That's why
which ones-
the federal government's been warning the states they
Well-
may not be able to use them. So I'm just asking, if that,
But we'll do that research.
okay,
But right now, it takes them so long to make a decision, we'll know whether this works or not.
okay.
So we can't wait for them to their SIP plans are different. The expectations for everything we do is in 2 different versions. And so what we're trying to do is to make the right decision for us to be able to communicate with our parents and our students, and I'm trying to be positive, but they'll change it by May. But we're asking you to move forward with this, because we believe this matches the curriculum we wrote. It's going to help us, because the iLearn is adaptive too, and we're trying to figure out how we get rid of things, and we're not trying to test kids we don't have to.
Exactly.
Make sense?
Yep.
Makes sense. And it's time to align our assessments with the curriculum and the standards.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have 2 reports. We have a report from Tracy Reed, our Chief Academic Officer, on the Fort Wayne Community School academic system, and then we will have a COVID-19 report, the coronavirus report. And so in your packet,
You want to do it? I'll try to do it. Okay.
should have a copy of the PowerPoint.
All right. You want me to wait till Steve come back or keep going?
Let's keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Good evening, President Hollingsworth and Board of Trustees, Dr. Robinson. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and share what's been occurring in our Academic Services Department as it relates to our academic system. As Dr. Robinson and my colleagues shared with you in the preceding weeks, we have been working on the academic side of the pyramid, specifically on our academic system. And so this evening, I'm going to share with you all of the components and then how they work together. So who we are, Academic Services. So as Chief Academic Officer, I've only been with the district since 2014, but I come from a background where I've done teachers, AP, principals, and assistant superintendent in Ohio and Michigan before coming to Fort Wayne Community Schools. And it has been a pleasure working here. I also have the privilege, in addition to looking at things from the perspective of an educator, I also have a son who's in the district at the high school, so I kind of look through the lens of a parent as well, which has been awesome. So my team is awesome. For a district our size, I would say we were relatively small, but I have 4 departments that report directly to me, and then they have others that report to the leadership of those departments. So the first department is our English language learners, and that is led by Emily Kearns. We next have our Department of Special Education. I'm going to ask them to stand when I call them. Is led by Dr. Nikki Sprunger. And Nikki's not here this evening. She had a family situation that she had to take care of. But I do have several of my administrators out of my special ed department. And then my Title I program is led by Kim Brooks, who is a manager. And then curriculum assessment and instruction is led by Jennifer Mabels, who is the director. So what do we do in academic services? Academic services provides systems to achieve the Fort Wayne Community Schools' academic goals through curriculum development and implementation of academic programs and services. So we're busy. All of the work that we do is driven by the district mission and goals: achieve and maintain academic excellence. Oops. Uh-oh. So there, I call it, I've said that all of the departments and those programs that we have, I feel like they have like a symbiotic relationship with curriculum and instruction. Each has a role and responsibility to ensure students have access to the curriculum and support for student success. So, our ELL, Special Ed, Title I contribute to the development of the comprehensive system to educate all students using the district-adopted curriculum, assessments, and instructional frameworks. So, they work together. I want to call it like a little machine. They feed information in order for us to help our kids be successful. And I'll talk about each one of them a little bit in a second. Now, Faye talked about the readiness side of the pyramid and how our students, 80% of our students should have their needs met by Tier 1. And we feel the same way about curriculum. 80 to 90% of students will access and successfully learn the core curriculum. Tier 2 and Tier 3 provide specialized supports and enhancement for certain students. So when we talk about our high ability, when we talk about our students with disabilities or ELL, those may be some specialized support. So, our English language learner program is the first program that I'm going to talk about briefly before I get to curriculum and instruction. Our English language learner program has the responsibility of identifying all students when they enroll in our district through a home language survey. And then they develop and implement language acquisition instruction. They also provide family and parental outreach, and they do translation and interpreting services for the whole district. The interpreting piece has grown significantly during my tenure here, and especially like parent-teacher conferences and whatnot. English language learner program also provides language instruction for speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And that is aligned to our district's curriculum. So our EL teachers support students accessing the core curriculum in order for them to be successful. And we do have an annual assessment, the WEA assessment, that the state requires for us to administer to our EL students to determine their language progress. Special education. Our special education department is probably one of our larger departments, and they're responsible for evaluation and identification of students who are suspected of having a disability. If a student is identified with a disability, they have an individualized education plan developed and implemented. An IEP provides services and supports so students can be successful in school. They also provide related services, which include occupational therapy, physical therapy, Braille services, hearing interpreters, and speech language support. I'm skipping missing. And finally, we have 12 pre-K classrooms that serve students with disabilities. And our department also supports non-public schools. So they're very busy. Our high ability program, although it's not a separate department, we have a coordinator that's in our curriculum department that is responsible for identifying students for high ability. Along with her colleagues in the curriculum department, they provide resources to extend and enrich high ability student learning. They provide high ability parent nights, and they have a newsletter. And they help also with professional learning to support teachers on addressing the needs of high ability students. Our Title I program. Title I provides resources for programs and services to improve academic outcomes for economically disadvantaged students. This includes delinquent and neglected students as well, and students who may be homeless. We have 26 schools who are identified to receive funds, and we have 20 Fort Wayne Community School preschool programs at 17 sites.
Tracy, what's our estimate for the number of homeless students we have?
I don't have that information. That would be Faye.
We're right around 800.
Yeah. Another requirement or expectation for schools and districts that receive Title I funds is to ensure parent engagement, and so we do that as well. And then we also provide support for 31 non-public schools that receive funds for students who live in our Fort Wayne Title I areas. So what do we do as it relates to curriculum assessment and instruction? So each one of those areas contribute to the overall development of the district's curriculum, assessment, and instruction system. First, I'll talk about curriculum, because each one has a process and a purpose. So a district's curriculum is vital to the academic success of a school system. It reflects the expectations of what should be learned and learned well. Fort Wayne Community Schools Assessment Instruction System provides a structure in which subject area content, assessments, and instruction enable student learning and prepares them to be college and career ready. As I said before, there are 3 interrelated components which are influenced by student needs. First, I'm going to discuss the curriculum. So we have some components to our district's curriculum, 3 components. We have a scope and sequence. We have unit plans and lesson plans. Scope and sequence basically tells us, it articulates the standards and concepts to be taught across the school year. And then their unit plans provide more detail and outlines, again, the standards, concepts, in more detail the skills. And then our lesson plans are daily. The lesson plans provide structure, but they also provide flexibility for teachers to make adjustments based on their student need. So you have this document as a handout. It identifies the process to develop curriculum, and we have 4 stages to that process. Teachers participate in professional learning to acquire knowledge and skills to develop a scope and sequence, unit, and lesson plans. It is during this stage that the textbook adoption process or resource adoption process takes place. So we have been involved in social studies textbook adoption this past school year, so then when we write curriculum this summer, they'll have newly adopted materials to support that work. Stage 2 is the application of the new learning, which is the writing process. And then stage 3 is a pilot year in which teachers who design the curriculum are also implement it and recommend changes for the following school year. Stage 4 is a full implementation, which occurs the following year after the pilot year. And it has been modified based on teacher recommendation. Now, you should also have a handout that looks similar to this. We have a 7-year plan that aligns textbook and resource adoption to curriculum writing and modification. So we have a pretty good plan on where we're going for the next 7 years as it relates to curriculum development. Assessments. Although assessments are not always well received, they do serve a purpose. They aid in instructional decisions, inform collaborative discussions and planning, and helps in resource allocation.
So who doesn't like that? Where's the pushback?
I just think that people think that we assess too frequently, and I get it. It's the summative, I want to say state summative assessments that kind of get a bad rap, because you really can't do a lot with the data because there's such a lag between when it's administered and when you get the data back. Our assessment system is grounded in our PPP. It allows teachers and leaders to examine specific data, personalize instruction, and it supports professional learning. You should have another handout, which identifies the types of assessments we in the district utilize, and we've talked a little bit about them. Formative assessments, and those are the assessments that teachers use regularly in their classroom instruction to gauge whether or not students have learned what they planned. We have classroom summative assessments, end of the unit tests, and then interim assessments like the one we just approved this evening. And then state summative assessments, which are our I-Learn assessments.
What's I-AM?
It's an alternative assessment for students with disabilities.
And if you could go back to that graph. That's why educators, when you say assessment, they see it as a 4-letter word. Because the state and federal government, we used to, in 1900, when I started teaching with horses, teachers were the experts as to where students were. Then you put all of these layers on top. You involve the government, and then you tie teacher pay to test. It was the beginning of the end. So educators are not against assessments, they're against testing. So part of what we're gonna make the comment is the federal government, we've got so many hands in the pot, and they all ask us for different things to get the money. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the issue, trying to get us back to where teachers see assessments as helpful to instruction. But it's an uphill battle, because there's so much out there, Steve, that we don't get to decide, but then we have to implement.
So when we have assessments, we utilize a cycle of continuous improvement, and we go through analyzing the data, establishing goals, learning to be able to utilize that information to implement changes in instruction, and then we go through the process of monitoring, assessing, and adjusting based on what we've done with the data. And this quote just kind of summarizes why we use assessments and the purpose behind them. Lastly, our instructional frameworks. We have instructional frameworks. They've been developed and aligned to our core content area. So we have them for math, language arts, social studies, and science. And they basically provide us with a structure of key components of the content area that need to be provided during instruction. It identifies and supports high-leverage instructional practices and allows for personalization based on students' need. Frameworks. The frameworks articulate key elements essential for content-specific instruction. The frameworks identify, like I said, high-leverage practices and allows for personalization. Last slide. So under construction, as we talked about earlier, we are in the process of implementing a local assessment for the 2021 school year. We're working on a co-teaching framework to be able to support more small group instruction and support for students in the classroom, in the core classrooms. And then we're looking to do some preschool alignment. And then we're working on a continuum of services for our students with disabilities. So that takes us to the end. The three things that I hope you take away from this is each department has unique roles and responsibility that contribute to the whole. Curriculum, assessment, and instruction are at the center of Fort Wayne Community Schools' core business. And when we say all students, we really do mean all students. And then the final word, one of the most powerful things a school can do to help enhance student achievement is to guarantee specific content is taught in specific courses and at grade levels. So what questions might you have?
Tracy, thank you for this overview of the academic side of things. My question is, in the pyramid, where 80 or 90% of the students are to get the instruction in the general classroom setting, what happens and when? Who has the responsibility, and what happens when the 10% isn't able to follow along? I had gone to a legislative forum, and I heard teacher after teacher after teacher talk about the kids who are coming into their high school classes who can't read, but at second or third grade levels. So in my mind, somewhere along the way, that should have showed up in the data, and obviously teachers would have been aware of it, but who has the responsibility to intervene in those students? We used to have something like reading readiness or something for people who were late bloomers and not, able to get the classroom instruction in, at the time it was given, so that they didn't fall through the crack, they could be caught up somehow. What are we doing for that intervention? I'm not saying every student needs it, I'm just saying, who has the responsibility? Is it the teacher? Is it coaches? Is it the principal and the teachers? Is it the people who are looking at this data or in your office? Who is it that has the ultimate responsibility to say, what's going on with this student?
So from my perspective, it's everybody. It's everybody here at GRIO. It's everybody in the building. We all have to take ownership for our kids. So when I say that, everyone has a role and responsibility in ensuring that our kids have what they need to be successful. Typically, the 10% at the top are going to be our high ability kids and our students with moderate or severe disabilities who can't get what they need from the core curriculum. So then the question becomes, what are those specialized programs? And I'm not sure if you saw in our special ed, we have an alternative curriculum for our moderate to severe students. So those would be students there. And then we have our high ability strategies and opportunities for those students. And within the context of all the other students, you may need small group instruction. It is using the data will help us be able to determine what a child needs. It's like, you get sick and you go to the doctor, there are some symptoms, and then they may have to do more assessing or testing to figure out what's wrong. And so that's what academic services does, is to look at the data that we have available. We engage parents in that conversation as well to make sure that we get a full picture on what's going on. So it's not just one person or a couple of people. I think it's a school community effort.
I guess in a related question, and it goes back almost to your last statement with school, and I'll rephrase this a little bit, school and community. It's one thing for us to get our house in order, but can we affect change with the assistance that youth serving organizations provide to students, especially in need? And I'm thinking of all the groups that have study tables and grants that they've been given by some foundation where they pledge to help those students that are behind in school. So do we have that ability to affect, I mean, you talk about adaptive systems. Is there an opportunity for us to go beyond our walls? I mean, much like the healthcare systems are doing. They understand that, and theirs is a different model, a different financial model, but they understand that if we can prevent people from coming to our hospitals by reaching out through them through these community partnerships, we're going to be a healthier community. So given that analogy, can we become a smarter community by working with all of those youth-serving organizations providing educational assistance? Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect sense. And we are doing that. Faye and I work together frequently, she works with engages with the community partners.
Because I don't see the needle moving. I don't see the gap closing if all these groups are getting all this money to help close that gap.
Yeah.
Let me answer that another way. I think when we look at who's responsible, the focus is always on the relationship between the teacher and the student. And connected to the teacher and the student is the home. But the more diverse your community is, we are, as a school organization, now taking on many of the responsibilities that community agencies used to do because the funding's drying up for them too. So what becomes our challenge, Steve, is we could list partners for days. Faye could plaster this wall. But most of our partners, they can do this much, and we can do this much, and we still have that much to do. So the reason that we focus on Tracy's area so much, if we can't get them to read and write, there was a speaker who was here with us, Gene Clinton, talked about we got to focus on stopping them before we throw them in the river, rather than trying to save them at the other end of the river. So I think we've got to, we wouldn't make it without community partners. One of the strongest, I was just talking with Lena at JA, and they're large enough that they get support, that they can actually put programs out. But some of our smaller, Ewell Wilson Center, I mean, we have wonderful partners, Boys and Girls Club. But one of the things that handicaps us, Steve, is the ability for kids to get to centers. So if it's in my neighborhood, Maria's husband, if it's in my neighborhood, I can impact those kids. So we're still struggling with that, and we're trying to work through that. But I think that I don't want us to take our eye off. The relationship is between the teacher and the student, and all of the rest of us, including you, have to figure out what resources that teacher has. Because the problem we have is when we don't do a good job of it, students fall behind enough to end up in special ed, then we lose control of some of the teaching because then it's federally mandated. So it's complicated. We don't blame teachers, but that's where the relationship is, along with the families and all the rest of us. Everybody in here has to support that relationship. So that's why a lot of the stuff you see us bringing, when we go to get federal grants, it's about improving teacher capacity. The curriculum writing is about giving them something to teach. Even the assessments that we go boo sometimes is about giving them information. So it's mind-boggling. And some of those agencies they almost can't prove a direct causal, but it's just one more agency if they're helping 5 kids, stay in school or come to school. But maybe one time even, we just need to talk about a partnerships and have that as a work session. You'd be amazed at how many there are, Steve, for almost anything we do. Any other questions of Tracy?
Any other questions? Okay, so now we have a report from someone, that you, Dr. Robinson, or
Charles.
Charles Kamick,
Mary Hess, and I need to
Operations
say out
Officer
loud.
and Mary Hess,
They didn't know they were doing this
COVID-19.
until about, what, 11 o'clock today?
I think it was a little later than that, but
So it's not full-blown, but it's a conversation we have got to have out loud. So I appreciate them volunteering, didn't you?
yes,
Okay.
indeed. Very briefly, Mary and I are going to give you an update on what we see as what's happening in the school corporation and what's happening in the community around COVID-19, which is, I think, the preferred name of the coronavirus. Mary Hess is our Director of Health and Wellness, and she's also a member of the Allen County Board of Health. Our number one priority has not changed. It's doing what's best for children. So I want to say that at the outset. And as we've worked collectively, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, we think that the most effective response is as a community. So we have attended 2 meetings, and we're a part of the Allen County Department of Health Task Force. The first meeting was last Wednesday. I'm sure you saw it in the paper and on the news, and that was a broader gathering of community leaders, not-for-profits, business, government agencies to talk about what we saw coming down the pike and the speed which with this is taking over our lives has escalated dramatically. To say the least, the situation is fluid. If you haven't, there's a map on the CDC website that shows all the hot spots and how many places have now had confirmed cases of the virus. There are I think 2/3 of Italy is shut down. I mean, this is really starting to escalate. As a group, and this morning, I'm sorry, the meeting was with private, parochial, and public schools. And what should we do as a group, as opposed to independent agencies, to handle the crisis? The one thing we have agreed on specifically is that all medical information will be relayed through the Board of Health, and that on each one of our websites, we will have a link so that people can go there and get a consistent message. Fort Wayne Community Schools sent out letters and information to schools specifically this afternoon. We've set up a hotline. If you want to write this number down, it's 260-467-1907. So if staff or parents want to call us, all those calls will go to that number, and Mary or I or some other person, probably Mary or I, will be able to get them an answer. There's going to be a virtual meeting tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Virtual meaning everybody is going to call in. We didn't think it was a good idea to have a collective meeting in one location. Kind of is not a good idea right now. And I'm going to let Mary now go into a little bit more detail about the virus, and then we'll answer any questions you may have.
Did you talk about the 8 o'clock meeting?
No, I did not. I'm sorry. There's an 8 o'clock meeting with our task force, about 32 people, to start identifying subgroups and issues that we need to directly attack in advance as the crisis escalates. And it may be premature to call it a crisis. They haven't officially called it a pandemic, but I know we have at least 2 confirmed cases in Indiana, and we expect that number to grow.
We have 3, and another child was
4, okay.
in Avon. They had to close an elementary school
Right.
because a child came positive with the virus.
Okay.
True.
I can click, thank
Okay.
you. Thanks for giving me a minute to talk to you. Like Mr. Kamick said, many of us have been in a variety of meetings with community health leaders, conference calls, calls to the CDC. I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version of all of that, and please feel free to ask me questions. But probably one of the most, well, for those of you, maybe I can get this, there we go. In case you have been living under a rock, COVID-19 is among us. This is a new novel coronavirus that was first detected in Wuhan City, China, late December. So we really have not had very much time between when they've recognized this and now. And since then, there's been just a rapid escalation to multiple countries, including the U.S. That cool map that's on the Johns Hopkins website that Mr. Kamick referred to, that's kind of a snapshot of that. You can actually hover over any of those little circles. It'll tell you how many cases are in the area. It'll tell you if they're resolved or not. Sadly, there are deaths associated with this. All that information is in there. So I get this question probably most often, like why? Why should we be worried about this? We have lots of flu. We have lots of people that die in the United States from flu every year. Why is this a big deal? And it really does go to the fact that it is a novel virus. That means that we don't have any vaccine for it. We don't have any good way to treat it, and we don't have any herd immunity. And herd immunity is, you know, when our bodies see a virus, we make immunity, and we all kind of protect each other. This doesn't have any of that going for it. So we have to kind of use some different strategies to really control the spread, and then we're trying to buy time for those vaccines and drugs to kind of come and help us all out. So that's where we're at. It is changing rapidly, and honestly, I would have told you 2 days ago, it changes every day. I get updates every day. I get updates numerous times a day. So it really is a very fluid situation. Here's what we think we know. We think this virus impacts children to a lesser degree than adults. This doesn't necessarily mean they don't get it, but they don't seem to be as sick, which is very good news for people who work in schools. But it does really impact adults in a big negative way. Not such a good thing, because the adults have to be here to run the show. So we have to watch both groups, and we do on a daily basis. We're looking for fever, cough, shortness of breath, and it's that very last symptom that really drives people to the hospital. Cough and fever is one thing, but when you're short of breath, that's a very scary event, and we want to make sure that people have a clear path when we're seeing cases in the community, that they know what to do, and they know how to access that health care in the safest possible way. It's a little different than the other diseases we see. It is more serious for the older folks. As Mr. Kamick said, Fort Wayne Community Schools has an information website. Thank you to Krista and all those folks who work on that, Jack, that made that happen so quickly. There are wonderful links on there to other reputable sources. And I would caution families at home, make sure you're getting your advice from people who really do know. Public health is different than private health. There are experts that can give us good advice. We should listen to them. There's a lot of stuff on the internet. We don't want anyone to be misinformed. We also we link right over to the health department's website, so you can get all the good info there as well. This is probably where we need to have our focus right now. You know, we're being watchful on the worst things that could happen, but right now we just need to focus on the things we can control. And this list does not look sexy, for lack of a better word. These are things that your mother told you. The problem is we don't do them regularly. We all know we should. We don't do it. The first one on there, wash your hands, and I would say early and often. I'm going to read you a few things when you're supposed to wash your hands, see if any of them surprise you. Certainly after coughing and sneezing, using a tissue, using the restroom, most of us do that. Before touching your face or eating, I don't know how many times you touched your face during this meeting, but I counted several of my own touches. It's a very hard habit to break, and we need to work on it. So you can get this virus into your body through your mouth, your nose, your eyes. something we need to be aware of more often. After you've been in public and touched all the things that we touch when we're in public, after you've counted money, after playing with animals or toys, all of those things should be triggers to go wash your hands. So I hope the answer for all of you when we're done with this meeting and we go home, first thing you do when you go home is wash your hands. It'll make me feel so much better. Good. You want to do this for 20 to 30 seconds with soap and water. That's another thing we really cheat on. You know, we're all in a hurry. We're rushing from one place to another. Take your time. Sing happy birthday to yourself or the ABCs, get through the 20 to 30 seconds. Hand sanitizer is good and useful for this particular virus. You want to have something that's at least 60% alcohol content, but we have all of those things and we can use them. We just have to remember to do it. Next one, number 2, stay home if you are sick. This is true for students and for staff. Right now, we don't have people that are really sick in our community, or at least not very many that are sick with this virus that we know of. But we have lots of other things. This is great advice no matter what we're trying to prevent. We all try to be the tough guy and come in. All we do is spread our germs all around, and it's just not worth it. Social distancing. We want to keep as much distance between us and others as we can. 3 to 6 feet is the recommendation. This is something that spread droplets, so it's the moisture that comes out of your mouth and nose or when you cough and sneeze, and I guess 3 to 6 feet is about as far as any of us can sneeze, so that's the general wisdom. I get a lot of questions about masks on this one and whether we should be using them. The general wisdom is masks are for sick people. So if you're sick and you have symptoms, you should put those on to prevent the spread, but then we want you out of our environment. So we shouldn't see people running around in our environment with masks on because we want them to go home. If you can find them, yeah. The other thing we want to make sure is if people are having to take care of sick people at home, that's another time a mask could be helpful to them. But you have to know how to use it, and that hand washing piece is absolutely essential within it. There's no magic mask to keep it away. Number 4 is clean frequently touched surfaces with regular household disinfectant. You don't have to go to the store and buy any magic ingredient. You probably have all of these things already in your cabinet at home. You just have to use them. Special attention to frequently touched, and we often forget our technology when we're talking about things like that. So cell phones, really bad. You know, they probably need done several times a day. Keyboards. Our technology people tell us it is safe to clean all of those if you're using an alcohol-based sanitizer. That's where we should go. And number 5 is don't travel if you don't have to. On that health department website, you can find a CDC link that tells you all of the travel alerts. There are travel alerts around the world. China, Italy, South Korea, Iran, all still on there. But the truth of it is, it's growing exponentially, and it's best to not travel at all if you don't have to. And especially public modes of transportation, not great because you can't keep that 3 to 6 feet. So I hope that this is reassuring to you. I hope it's reassuring to know that we are in constant contact with the health department. They're very good communicators, and we are all ears. I think sometimes people worry, does anyone have their hand on the tiller? And the answer is yes. It's just that it's rapidly changing, and we have to be ready and willing to be flexible. Mr. Kamek, in particular, keeps Dr. Robinson informed on all that information so she can make the best decisions possible. And that's just a hand-washing thing. We absolutely are going to take the recommendations from local and state health experts. We're not making up rules on our own for this. We're listening to the people who know. The last thing I just want to mention a little bit is about quarantine and isolation. If you want to sound like a super cool public health person, these measures fall under the NPI, or non-pharmaceutical interventions for public health. Because we don't have vaccines and drugs, like I mentioned earlier, we have to count on these. And the good news is they do work, we just have to use them. It's something you don't see all the time though, and so we're hearing a lot of talk about quarantine and isolation. There is a difference between the two. In quarantine, these are people that have been exposed to the virus. They've had close contact with someone who has tested positive for the COVID-19. They're not sick people. They're asked to stay home and practice social distancing at home. They take their temperatures twice a day, and they look for other symptoms of the disease, and they report those to the Department of Health. Isolation happens when you actually have symptoms of the disease and then test positive. Some people can get isolated in their home. We have no idea. We hope that everybody isn't sick enough to be in the hospital, because heaven knows we can never probably take care of all of that. Many people will be able to stay in their home, but they should take extra precautions. Stay in another room from the rest of their family members. Usually they're asked to sleep in different rooms or use a different restroom if that's possible. And then again, all that close attention to washing surfaces, handling your tissues in the appropriate way, getting rid of those, washing your hands. That's what we've got in the toolkit. So that's kind of my Reader's Digest version of the events. Are there questions for me? Yes.
You know, you talk about touching your face. I probably did it 50 times
Me
already.
too. It's hard.
Is there any kind of gloves you can wear or should wear?
Gloves are recommended when you're providing care to anybody, especially doing any cleanup, getting rid of trash, those things. If you're taking care of a sick person, that is a best practice if you have them. But for daily use, not so much. Just that hand washing piece. Be vigilant.
I don't,
No.
there's a shortage of medical supplies right now. Masks, gloves, the protective wear. So even if you wanted to get them, if you don't have them by now, I think the earliest some of those supplies are going to be available is the first of next month. And even the hospitals are putting their things under lock and key because things have disappeared.
Awesome. More to come. We'll keep you posted.
If
promise.
we would get, and this might be a question for you, Dr. Robinson, but, so if we would get to the point where we might have to close a school or something, do we have, I guess I'm concerned about students who rely on us for breakfast and lunch. Do we have some contingency plans for that? And then my other question is, you know, we have a lot of hourly employees, and if they can't come to work, they're not going to get paid, and that concerns me too.
Do you want to take that one?
I mean, we're not there yet, but.
Yeah. Well, at 8 o'clock, our brain trust is getting together, and we probably have 100 questions. All
Okay.
of those are on it. And one of the things that we have to do is to have a plan B, C, and D.
Yeah.
I think the thing that, and you and I have had this conversation, I said to Charles when he started going to those meetings, it sounds easy, close the school, because parents are going to panic. But if you don't shut down anything else, then parents have to go to work. The kids, where are the kids? The number of students that we feed, I got an email from one of the other superintendents in the area. Somebody put out that the federal government was going to relax the food guidelines and we can feed the kids the way we do in the summer. What that means then is that the people at food service have to be working to prepare it. Then we got to take it to wherever we normally do. And if that center's not open,
Right.
then the kids have to leave their house to go get the food. So one of the things I guess we wanted to talk tonight, schools around the country and schools around the state are starting to panic. And for the first time, Janet, after we sent out some information, got lots of, I'm not sending my child, is not safe. We don't have a case. But we live in the city, we live in the county. Some of the people who don't even live, most of my employees don't live in Fort Wayne. So this is a county, Northeast Indiana issue. But my biggest concern is, we're gonna spend tomorrow
Yes.
looking at every single aspect. Because it sounds easy to close. But then if people aren't working,
Yep.
like the classified folks,
Yep.
they don't get paid. And so even Kathy brought up something today. When you think about it, we have to go 180 days. You know, my grandson, I was bringing him to school today, he went, whoa, wait a minute. Does this mean this is gonna mess up graduation? Because seniors are thinking, well, wait a minute. So those are the kind of things we're gonna try to not be experts, but to give a plan A, B, and C. We'll keep the board informed, but being honest, I'm saying to Charles, we have to follow Board of Health guidelines. Because the minute we go off the rail and do something that could put people in danger, now we're at the table
Yes.
to push back on things that we think aren't in the best interest of kids. But I guess I would just say, everybody just, Charles has this sign every month, stay calm, carry on, worry. You know, but those simple health tips, I watch people not wash their hands, and I just want to go up and shake them. You know? And one of the tips they had, even when you're going down the stairs in public, have something between you and the railing. Even take out a Kleenex and open the door. I mean, we're not trying to make people paranoid, but whatever's going to happen in Northeast Indiana, guess what? It's going to happen to all of us at the same time. So we're just trying to not panic. What you just talked about, whether we close schools, and then what about all of these people who depend on us for a living?
Or if we don't close, but another district closes, and we have employees who have children in that district, then how are we going to handle that? There are a lot of moving parts that we need to start addressing, or at least preparing for.
Now, as we always do, all of us are talking. So we're trying to be lockstep, but all it takes is just hysteria and people not being informed. But we would never say that this is not something to worry about. I have lung issues, kids with asthma. I didn't even realize people are diabetic. I mean, there's a whole list of people. And the Avon situation today is just throwing people into a tizzy because they said it didn't really impact kids the way it did. Now, we don't know everything that's happening in Avon. But I think the other part is, don't take what happens in California and panic, because we're going to keep you informed about what's happening in Fort Wayne. And somehow we'll make it.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, I hope, you know, parents and staff can rest assured that, you know, we're doing everything possible to plan for every contingency and consulting experts, and I would, you know, urge everyone, listen to the experts. Don't listen to what you read on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. That's not good information. Listen to the experts. We showed a couple of sites. Fort Wayne Community Schools has one, County Health Department, and so on. Yep. Thank you, Charles, Mary. Okay. Whew. Member comments?
None.
Nothing.
Good.
Dr. Robinson?
One of the things we're trying to have, one of the local hospitals put out a press release. And we're trying to remind them that I know you're responsible for your business, but there's a ripple effect. And so we're dealing quite a bit even with everybody else's issues. So I would also urge parents just not to become hostile. We're not going to give you the wrong information. I love that you said, listen to the experts. So we're going to also have to, and Charles knows that and Mary knows that, try to help our other surrounding businesses understand, please, before you make a decision, you have to figure out the place that has 30,000 kids. Because it is going to impact the children. So I appreciate you letting us have a conversation
Well,
tonight.
I'm glad you did that. Just one comment, and that is the board is responsible for appointing someone to Jordan's seat. We don't know what there actually is no process outlined in the law, so we are basically free to design one. And so we will still be, you know, that's something that we'll be discussing. But if you do have to meet the same criteria, live in the 4th District, you have to be at least 18 years of age, and you have to be a registered voter? Is that correct? Okay. So, if anybody out there is interested, keep an eye out on our website for, or, you can, if you're interested, you can call the district and the superintendent's office and express your interest. So that's all I have. We next meet Monday, March 23rd. Although we have an executive session on Monday, the board does, Monday, March 16th, with our superintendent search consultants, and we get a slate of candidates that evening for us to take a first look at and discuss, and then plan interviews. So the microphone will be open after we adjourn. Do we have a motion for
So
adjourn?
moved. Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? So we have a couple people that signed up to speak. Bethany Allen.